remember how to do the show.
I do not remember how to do the show. I was just thinking that earlier today, trying to remember how to produce a show after we get done recording. I couldn't remember all the steps I had to go through.
Alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Welcome to the Greatest Lists podcast, a show about music and lists. This season, your hosts Jason and Eric are counting down the top 25 guitar solos of the 80s and the top 25 guitar solos of the 90s. Think your favorite made the list? Tune in and find out. Take it away, boys.
Welcome to Greatest Lists, a music and talk podcast featuring lists of the greatest songs of all time. I'm Eric, your host. Joining me, as always, is my co-host, Jason. What's going on, Jason?
The 80s is what's going on,
man.
Yeah.
Man, it feels like we haven't done this in, what, like a year and a half?
Yeah. No, it's good. I cannot wait to get through our guitar solos of the 80s, man.
So this is the second half of Season 2. The first half of Season 2, we counted down the top 25 guitar solos of the 90s. And
That's right.
Here in the second half, we're going to count down the top 25 solos of the 80s. Which, I mean, let's be real. This is the half of the countdown that we were really waiting for, right?
Yes, yeah. I'm glad we saved it. The 90s might not have been so I don't know, shiny.
Yeah,
we saved those.
We had to pull some out of the nooks and crannies for that list.
Yeah.
I think something that we need to save at the very top before we get started with this. These are our choices for 25 guitar solos. These are not the top 25 guitar players.
True.
Let's just clear that up. Those are two very different lists, and so these are our picks for top 25 guitar solos.
Yeah, and I think we better mention too that there are actually some solos in our season 1 list of the 80s soundtrack songs that we kind of skimmed over. I mean, there should be a Prince song in this list from Purple Rain. I mean, there's some incredible guitar playing from Prince, from Prince. But since we already covered him, I kind of skipped over that one because definitely Purple Rain would have been on my list.
Yeah, in fact, it was on my list. And
and I told you, no, take it off.
You told me to take it off, yeah.
Blame it on me. Blame it on me.
Jason's really in charge of the show. I'm just here for...
But there's a lot of guitar solos in that list if you go back and listen to season
after
1.
we talked about that, I went and looked at the list.
Yeah.
I was like, there's a lot of guitars, or there's a lot of songs that could cross over into both lists. So
that's the only little asterisk,
Yeah, and we might. I mean, I guess we could add those back in our after show or our after list show.
Our honorable mentions.
Honorable mention show. Yeah.
That's going to be a long one too. We might do 25 for that show.
I don't know. This list wasn't, when I was making my picks, I didn't struggle as much as I thought I would.
I struggled at the bottom. I'm like, okay.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's a few here at the bottom that I was like, they should probably be higher, but these are my favorites. There's a few favorites that I'm like, okay, I got to get these in at the end, and then we'll push some of those other ones that probably should have made it to the honorable mentions.
Right. And the reason I made that distinction just a minute ago was because once I separated guitar solos from guitar players, that kind of made my job as far as I'm concerned, made my job a little easier.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was looking at just the solo and not the person.
Gotcha.
And I think that's what made it not so... I mean, I was dreading making the list because I thought I would have like 60 songs on there. But when I looked at just the solo, at least for me, it made it easier to pick songs out.
Yeah.
So,
I'm with you.
Yeah. Well, are you ready, or do you want to...
Let's do it, man.
All right. So, starting out at number 25, of the top 25 guitar solos of the 80s. This episode's song is Love Somebody from Rick Springfield.
Behind the music,
Richard Lewis Springthorpe.
Springthorpe. Rick.
When I read that, I laughed. I literally laughed out loud. Richard Lewis Springthorpe is 73 years old. Can you believe that?
Wow.
And he was born in Sydney, Australia. He has 27 albums to his credit, including one he just released this year. And he just hit the road last month on a tour at 73 years old.
Wow.
He started playing guitar when he was 13. He's also an actor. When he first started out, he had guest roles on all the big shows. Wonder Woman, Incredible Hulk, $6 Million Man, Hardy Boys. He was even in the pilot episode for the original Battlestar Galactica.
Oh, wow.
In 1981, he was signed to RCA Records, and he released the album Working Class Dog. But however, he and his manager didn't think the album would do very well, which doesn't make any sense to me. I just recorded an album, but it's going to be crap. I don't think so because of that, he also took an acting job as Dr. Noah Drake on the soap opera General Hospital. Well, it turns out that the first single from the album, Jesse's Girl, went straight to number 1.
Yeah.
And so he ended up having to star on the show and tour at the same time, which really did him all the favors in the world because the show made the song more popular and the song made the show more popular. And so he just became this he was everywhere all the time. In 1984, he made his big screen debut in a movie called Hard to Hold. And he was also responsible for the movie soundtrack. The movie was an absolute flop at the box office.
I've never seen it.
But the soundtrack produced several charting singles, including today's song, which made it all the way to number 5. So you say you've never seen the movie?
Never saw the movie.
Yeah,
No.
I saw it in the theater.
Okay.
And then also saw it on like HBO and rented the VHS. I liked the movie, even though it flopped.
let's get personal.
So like I said, I love the movie. I went and read some of the critics what they said about the movie, and it was they weren't nice. I mean, and now that I look back on it, they're probably right. It's probably a pretty bad movie. If you want to watch it, it's on Pluto. It's streaming.
Oh, okay.
On Pluto. Yeah.
I'm going to add that to my list.
But if you don't get to it, you're really not missing anything. Now that I look back on it and not 14 anymore. Because I liked it because he was a rock star, and I learned a lot of rock star moves from him on stage in that movie. But I really did like the soundtrack. The soundtrack really was a lot better than the movie. And this song in particular has always been one of my favorites, not just from that soundtrack, but of Rick Springfield's, and from the 80s, in general. So I'm assuming since you haven't seen the movie, you haven't heard the soundtrack either.
No, have not listened to I was listening to a little bit on Spotify.
Yeah.
In prep for the show. But I was actually surprised to see Rick made your list. But I've never owned any of his albums. He's always been like a radio artist.
Yeah.
To me.
Yeah.
I have a few of his 45 singles in my collection. Jesse's Girl, of course, everybody knows that song.
Sure.
It's an 80s staple. Just awesome. I've heard that song, many times over the years, and this song and a few others. And it's a good, pop rock song, I guess I would call it. But yeah, I've just never really had much experience diving into full albums with Rick Springfield.
Well, the only reason he's on the list is because I saw him live several years ago. And his guitar playing live blew me away.
Really?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. He even had like an extended solo between songs, like how 80s bands do. When they have he had one of those, and he is ridiculously good at guitar.
Wow. He seems more like a gimmick to appeal to women, in the soap opera crowd
than
anything. So It's
Yeah.
it's at least that's the stereotype that I've had on him for years. So
Yeah. No,
it's
he
kept me from actually, studying him and his guitar playing and seeing him in concert.
when I saw him in concert, like from the get go, from the very first song, he did a guitar solo during the song, and I went with a friend of mine who also plays guitar, and my buddy leaned over to him and he goes, "Did you know he could do that?"
Right.
And
Yeah.
I went, no,
No.
I did not. We kept looking at each other, just like, oh my God, how did we not know he could play like that?
Yeah.
So that's the only reason he is on the list, is because I have seen him play live, and he is a phenomenal guitar player. He just chooses not to add that into all of his songs. So yeah,
Kind of like his Star Wars action figure collection. Did you know he's a huge? Do you know he collects those?
No.
He has a huge collection. I think I watched it on
seriously.
a Disney Plus documentary or something. But he's got one of the really rare Boba Fett's. I think
that
was
shoots
the mail-in or
that shoots the
yes.
yes. Yeah.
He's got one of those, and they're at his
Oh
house.
my
This
gosh.
documentary, and he's going through all this, and he shows that off, and he's so proud of it. And I'm like, okay, man, yeah, go out on tour, make that money for those Star Wars
So
toys.
he has a show every week, every Friday night on 80s on 8 on XM called Working Class DJ, where he just plays like 8 songs for a certain topic. And he's
Okay.
always referring to himself as the biggest nerd in the world. I guess he wasn't lying if he's got that big.
Yeah, he keeps that tucked away too, man.
That's amazing. Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. You have to look it up.
The breakdown.
So like I said, the only reason Rick is on this list is because I've seen him live. That's one of the reasons. The other reason is I've always loved this song. And it was one of the first songs when I first started learning how to play guitar when I was 15 and 16 years old. This was one of the first songs that I wanted to learn how to play.
Oh, okay.
And this is one of the first solos that I figured out on my own. Not having, guitar tab in front of me or having my guitar teacher show me. I literally sat down for hours one day and figured out how to play it on my own. So I've always loved this song, but I always loved the feel of the solo. It's not overdone. It's very, it's very minimalist to a point, but it's got a lot of quick little runs in it. And that little chop at the end where he walks back down the neck to me, it just screams rock star, because he stops singing, he turns his guitar and he plays the solo, then he goes back to singing again. That's just ultimate rock star. And so I've always loved this song. I've always loved the solo and just how the solo fits into the song. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, it's
some of those-
very quick.
Yeah,
it's only
not
about
very
15
long.
seconds.
Yeah.
But there is a lot packed into there.
Yep. And it's at times it's very, when I first started learning it, I was like, oh, this is pretty easy. Then I get to parts of it and I'm like, well, wait, that's a little harder. And it's very understated, but it's also, I think it's underappreciated about how quick some of it really is.
Yeah, I can see that. You're definitely taking advantage of every second of solo in that, everything that he packs into there. But there's, just from, my limited experience with guitar playing, definitely some nice finger work there at the end. Just really quick and boom, and he's out of it. But yeah, I just never realized that he did all of his own solos and stuff. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
This song, it's one of those earworms, this song. 'Cause, it gets stuck in your head. It's very repetitive, and it's just not one of my favorite Rick Springfield songs. I put a few songs ahead of it.
Yeah,
there's some list.
There were 2 songs that came off of this soundtrack that he had that charted. This was a higher one. The other one was called Bop Till You Drop.
Okay, I don't know that one.
Yeah, I didn't get very high, but this was the highest one of the 2. But yeah, this has always been one. I don't know why. Probably because I've watched that movie half a dozen or more times, and just yeah. So, Love Somebody from Rick Springfield starts off our list at number 25. I got 2 bonus songs for you today from Rick. The first one is from his 1988 album Rock of Life, and it's a song called One Reason to Believe. and it's got a fairly good guitar solo in it as well.
Okay.
In 2018, though, he did a blues album called The Snake King, and it is chock full of guitar work. And probably my favorite is the song called "The Devil That You Know." So that'll be our second bonus song. But that whole album is worth a listen because he rips it up. So
cool.
That's a little freebie right there. If you have Spotify Premium, which we recommend, stay tuned to hear the bonus songs in their entirety at the end of the episode. Free Spotify users will get about 30 seconds of the song, but outside of Spotify, you aren't hearing anything but background music during the podcast. We invite you to visit the Song Whip links in the show notes that will connect you with the songs in your favorite music app. If you want to support us and get your name in the show notes, click over to patreon.com/The Retro Network, which is our home base. You can also find us on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it. I'm going to call it Twitter till the day I die. You can find us over there at Greatest Lists. You can also find us on YouTube at Greatest Lists and our website, greatestlistpodcast.com. So you really have no reason to not find our stuff because
just Google Greatest List, people.
Jason will be in charge for our number 24 song in the next episode. Thanks for listening to The Greatest Lists, and we look forward to continuing our list next episode.
You've been listening to The Greatest Lists.